Okay, Trevor?
Alrighty. So let's go ahead and kick the meeting off. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our Teams meeting. My name is Trevor Smith, and I'm one of the engineers at J4 Systems. Just to give you a little bit of background information on J4 itself. We are a 26-year-old technology company, and we employ a talented group of engineers with expertise ranging from Microsoft, Cisco, Citrix, VMware, and several other technologies. We also have a full managed services offerings that starts at Tier 1 help desk all the way up to a Tier 3, plus specialists in various other technologies as well. So today, as we discussed, we're going to be learning about Microsoft Teams environment. Our trainer is John Joseph, and he is a co-founder and president of J4 Systems. He has over 26 years of experience in information technology and is very well versed in Teams. If you have any questions during the training, please type them into the chat, and I'll make sure that we get your questions answered along the way. All right, John, go ahead and take it away.
I was muted. Okay, and we'd like you guys to stay muted if you could. If you have questions, just stick them into the chat, and Trevor will bring them to my attention. So today, so Trevor, if you could go over and take over the admitting people.
No problem.
Okay. So today we're going to go over Microsoft Teams as a collaborative tool. I'm sure many of you guys, if not all, are working from home nowadays. So Teams is a great tool for remote collaboration, and we're going to touch on a lot of the pieces of how to use Teams. There's a lot to cover. We were told that you guys needed to focus more on managing team meetings, so I'll go through some of the other stuff fairly quickly. If you do have questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. The group isn't too big today. It looks like we have about 20 people, so we should be able to cover any Q&A that might come up. Okay.
Looks like there's a question, John. Does everyone know how to use the chat function during this meeting?
Okay, so let's cover that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so everybody has this middle bar if they've joined the meeting. To bring up the chat window, just click on this icon that says Show Conversation, and you should get the chat window up here on the right-hand side. If you have a message, go ahead and just type it in here. While I'm in this screen, let me just show you another thing too. For those of you, there's only a couple of you who are doing video, but if you are doing video, there's a new feature that Microsoft just added called Show Background Effects. I'll just show you this real quick for fun. It used to be blur background, but now we can click on Show Background Effects, and they've got a number of standard backgrounds you can pick from. And you can scroll down and pick a different background. So like, let's say I wanted to do that one. You'll see my background changed. You can also upload your own backgrounds. So I have a few pictures that I've taken, and I can select one of those as my background. So the way to upload your own background is to copy the files to this location, and I'll put it in the chat window. So you guys can copy it. Oh, you don't have the backgrounds because you're GCC. Oh, didn't know that. Oh well, it is fun though. It'll eventually make its way to GCC, but everything kind of lags in that area. We do support some GCC clients. All right, so back to Teams.
Ashley Kirtley
is now exiting.
All right, so Teams is a collaboration tool. All you really need to use Teams is access to the internet. Now you can install the Teams client on multiple different devices. I'm going to be showing you the desktop client today, but there's also mobile clients available. So for any Android or iPhone or iPad type device, you can get the Teams client, and pretty much all the same features are there. So let's start up here in the top left. These are your basically your different feeds. So up here we have our activity feed. Under the activity feed, you're going to see your most current stuff you've been doing. So this is kind of like Facebook or something like that, where you have, or Twitter. It's going to sort by the most current stuff for you, so you can quickly find what you've most recently been messaging on, without having to drill through and find it. And because like this chat message is from one of my Teams channels. But this one's a one-on-one chat with Trever. So without having to hunt around, I can get quick access to my most current threads and stuff that's been happening. It'll show me missed calls, voicemails, etc. So that's the activity feed. It's right up here on the top left. The next one is the chat function. So this is for one-on-one chats. So these are one-on-one peer-to-peer chats that I have going on now, and they can be with a group of people or a single person. To start a new chat with a new person, you can click the new chat icon up here, or you can just type a name up in the top. But we'll do it by clicking a name here, or clicking the new chat, and I can type Trever and start a new conversation with Trever. And it actually just takes me to my thread I already have with chat with Trever. So I can type a message. He'll get it. Go ahead and respond, Trever. So I can react to his message. So I just hover over it. There's different emoticons. Another thing I can do, if he types me a big long
Lisa?
message and I want to share that message,
Yes.
I can
Is
click
now joining.
the little 3 dots here, and gives me some options. One of them is to share an Outlook. So this is pretty cool. I want to send that something that Trever shared with me out to somebody even outside the organization. I can do that. Type in the address. And email it. So other options you have, obviously, standard formatting with fonts. I can mark the urgency of a message. So this one's kind of nice. If you mark it important, they'll see it. It'll put it in red and give them a notification. If I mark it urgent, what it's going to do is it's actually going to send them a notification every 2 minutes for 20 minutes. So it's going to basically nag for me. I don't have to do it. So you'll see it flags it, it's red, and he's going to get notifications popping up every 2 minutes. So that's a nice feature. I can also upload documents to a chat. And these documents get stored in my OneDrive and then shared out to Trever. So I can either click here to upload a document and just pick one from my computer, or more likely I can just drag and drop one over there. So if I have a file I just want to drag over there, hold on, I'll just move this into there. I can just drag a file and just drop it right on the message. And it's uploading it, but it hasn't sent it to him yet. Until I hit enter or push this little button here, it's not going to send it to him. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to send it. Now I've just sent that image to Trever. He'll see it in just a second. So now it's done. So he should be able to see that. So that's how you can add a file. Now, like I said, that file's back-ended in my OneDrive, and it gets automatically shared with Trever. So Trever has access to that file, and he can edit it. It could be a Word document, could be Excel, whatever. So it's a way of starting collaboration on a document. Also, you have emoticons, so there's a whole list of those. You have GIFs. So more than you see here, you can just type any keyword in here that you want, and it'll give you a list of emoticons that are not GIFs that are applicable to that keyword I stuck in there. All right, another cool little feature are the stickers. There's a whole bunch of stickers, but you can also make your own memes. So I could select one of these, and then you type in your captions. All right. So that's pretty much chat. If there's no questions, I'm gonna move to the next thing, which is the Teams section itself. It looks like there's a question in chat, possibly, Trevor.
I'm working on that one right now, John.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look at teams themselves. So when you click on the Teams button, you're going to get a list of the teams you're a member of. And under each team, there's a set of channels. The way you can create a team is at the bottom here, you can join or create a team. There are 3 types of teams. So if I create a team from scratch, I can either copy an existing team. So this would be useful if you've got, if you create a team for each project maybe that you do, you might have a template team that you copy from that has different collateral already in that team. That can be useful. If you select build from scratch, there's going to be 3 types of teams you can create: private, public, and org-wide. A private team, you can't even see that team exists unless you've been invited to join it. So this might be useful, like if you're doing employee reviews or something like that. A public team, you can't see the content of the team unless you join it. You can either ask to join it or be invited to join it. But you can see if the team exists, so you can search and you can see the team. An org-wide team, everyone's automatically a member of the team, so you don't even have to join it. And typically, you're only going to have one org-wide team in an organization. So the most common would be a public team. So once you've created a team, by default, it's going to have one channel. And a channel is where the content for a team gets stored. The channel that gets created automatically is called general. So, and then the other channels you can create. So you'll see I have different channels under each team. Here's my internal projects team, and then I've created categories for my different internal projects like network security, server consolidation. To create a channel, you're gonna come. Well, let's take a look at team management first. But here's the team. If I go to manage my team, you'll see that there's 2 owners of this team and there's 13 members. I can add people to this team by coming up here and inviting somebody, or somebody could request to join, and I as an owner, I can accept them to that team. To make somebody an owner, you first make them a member, and then you can come over here, drop it down, and select them as owner. That's how you'd make them an owner. Now, it's important usually that you have at least 2 owners to any team, because only an owner can add or remove members from the team. And if somebody's out sick or wins the lotto or something like that, it's important to make sure you have some coverage on any given important team. So this is how you manage membership of a team. So to add channels to a team, you can right click on a given team and select Add Channels. So there are two types of channels. By default, anyone who's a member of a team has access to all the content in all channels of the team. So if you create a standard channel, everybody on the team automatically has access to any content on that team or on that channel. There is a special kind of channel you can create called a private channel. With a private channel, you can actually limit who has access to a subgroup of people within that team. Where you might want to do that is if you have external members of your team. We didn't talk about that, but you can actually add people who are not part of your organization to a team. So I can, and this is something that has to be turned on for your site. Your IT admin has to allow for that to happen. But there's a setting where you can allow guests and you can allow federated users to join a team. A guest is somebody who doesn't even have Teams. So they're going to come in through the web version of this. And then a federated person is somebody who works in Teams, but in another organization. So when I add a member, I can actually type in an email address of somebody who's not even part of my organization. Okay, back to channels. So once I've created a channel, and I'm moving through this fairly quickly because we only have, half an hour or so, and I was told, to spend more time on meeting management than on some of this other stuff. So if like I said, if you do have questions, make sure you put them into the chat, and Trevor will communicate that to me. All right. So going back to channels, a channel, like I said, is a place where content is stored. So inside the channel, you automatically get 3 tabs up at the top. You'll see I've added a 4th one here, but when you create a new channel, each channel has a post tab, it has files, and it has a wiki. Posts are similar to chat. In fact, they're identical to chat. But what you do see under posts is you see these different conversations. So let's go to one that has a few more here. All right, so here's some different conversations. So if I want to reply to a specific conversation, like here's one that has 57 different responses to it already, I would come down to the bottom of that conversation and hit reply. Then I'm replying to a specific conversation. If I come down to this box at the bottom and I type something, it's going to start a new conversation. That's important to note because a lot of times I'll accidentally come down to this bottom box and type something, and rather than responding to the conversation I originally wanted to respond to, I actually started a new conversation. It happens all the time.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Angela's asking, can you upload documents to a specific channel only and not to the general channel?
Correct. So that is correct, Angela. Content in a team is organized by channels, and so the files live within that channel. In fact, and we haven't talked about files yet. We're going to talk about them next. So why don't you hold on just a second? I'm going to even show you where those files live. So give me just a minute, and I will come back to that and show you exactly what's going on with files. All right. So back to this. So you've got basically these chats, which are conversations. So you got a number of conversations within this channel. Anybody who has access to this channel has access to these conversations and can see them. So these are shared content that anybody can reference, and you can even search. If you do a search at the top, it searches anything you have access to, including chats within a team or a channel. So we can do an overall search here. And like I said, anyone who's a member of this team has access to these relevant conversations that might apply to more than just one person. So what this does is it helps relieve kind of that email reply all thing that happens a lot when you're working with a group of people. You don't have to clutter up everybody's email. Everybody can come back to the same place and see the conversation. So that's kind of a nice way of decluttering email. Keep it here in Teams. All right, some things you might do here that you may not do in a one-on-one chat is you can do an @ mention. An @ mention is I do the @ sign, and I can type somebody like Trever. And this will send a notification to Trever that I'm asking for his input on this conversation within this channel. So Trever would have gotten a notification. So that's an @ mention. And there's a number of other things you can do that have the @ thing. But let me show you one that's kind of neat. If you're a manager or you work with a group, there's something called an @ praise. So this is a good way of giving an attaboy to one of your team members. So I can say, you'll see there's a number of things I can pick from, but let's say I picked thank you. Okay, I'm going to pick thank you, and yeah, so you don't put the @ there. So I can add actually more than one person to this praise. Click preview, and it shows you what it's going to look like, and then send. So that's going to add this this praise to this conversation. And so the rest of the team will see that, and you've given a public thank you to whoever it is you're trying to give a recognition to. So there's a good way to give recognition. And then all the other stuff we talked about in a chat apply, including you can add files. Now, files in a channel are stored in a different place. I mentioned that in a one-to-one chat, your files are stored in your OneDrive and then shared out. So I'm glad Angela brought it up. The way files work in a channel is when I create a team, every team gets their own page in SharePoint. So it's automatically created. You don't have to manage it. You don't have to do anything with it. But basically, it's going to create a page in SharePoint, which is, I don't know if you guys work with SharePoint, but in essence you are, because this is kind of the back end, one of the back ends for Teams. So here's an internal project page that gets automatically created, and then whoever's a member of my team automatically gets access to this page. So here's my internal projects page, and then one thing to see is, let's go click on it. You'll see everybody who's a member. Let me go back to it. Internal projects. What you'll see is that it creates the page, and then it creates a document library for each channel. So if I click on a given channel, I'll see the files that live in that channel. So you get all the benefits of SharePoint when a file is stored there, such as you can turn on versioning, you can share that file out, you can co-collaborate on a file. So I don't know if you guys have done any of the co-collaboration. We're not really going to cover it too much here, but let me just demonstrate it. Trever?
Yes.
All right, so we've got a file here called VM list, and I've actually pinned it to the top here, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. So if I click on VM list, I don't even have to open Excel. This is an Excel file. It's actually letting me edit that file within SharePoint, or within the Teams client itself. I didn't have to open Excel, so I've got basically Excel within my Teams client. So if I go up and start editing this, and Trevor's in it at the same time as me, we can both co-edit. Can you hop in, Trever?
Yes, sir. Let me go ahead and change one of these cells here.
So where are you at?
I'm on line
Oh,
34.
there it is. Trever just showed up, so his little icon showed up here. And he's further down, so I can't see him. But we'll see his cursor where he's editing. He's changing the color of it. We're seeing his edits as they happen. So we're both editing this document at the same time, and I can be making changes as well, and he'll see those as well. So that's co-editing, and that can be done. You can share a file out from SharePoint or OneDrive in Word, Excel, any of the Office applications, and co-editing is fully supported. And you'll see whoever's editing the document with you, and you'll see his changes real time as they happen. So I'm not going to spend much more time talking about co-editing, but that's how files work. They live within a channel. They live in a document library specific for that channel that's on the page that was created for that team. So let's talk about these tabs up here again real quick. Like I said, I added a tab for the VM list. The way you add tabs up here is you click the little plus sign, and then you'll select one of these apps. So there's a whole bunch of third-party apps you could throw up there if you guys use Jira or Confluence or one of those other things that are out there. I'm not going to go into that, but there's a bunch of third-party ones. But there's also any of these Office apps. So if I want to put a Word document up there, I could do that. If I want to put a OneNote document, in this case, I used an Excel document. So you click it, gives you your file list. So it looks at your file list, and then I can select that, and it adds it. It will save it to that top tab. And so this is actually got 2 pointers going to the same place. So if you click on the little down arrow there, I can then rename it and give it a logical name. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this since I already have it there. But that's how you add things to this top tab. Okay, so that's Teams and channels. I'm going to move on now to calls and meetings.
I have
Any
a quick
questions
question
on
for
the
you,
channel?
John.
Okay.
Angela's asking, does every channel have its own SharePoint that IT has to make available, or if there is a team that a person can have as many channels in that team?
Okay, so as I mentioned, in SharePoint, SharePoint already exists. A SharePoint page gets created automatically when a new team gets created. IT doesn't have to be involved. So that's one of the beauties of Teams, is it's enabling the end users to do kind of their own thing. You don't have to call IT every time you want to create a new team or a new channel or add content to a channel. You can do this yourself as long as you have permissions. You can go ahead and create a team. You can manage your team. When you create that team, the SharePoint page automatically gets created. You don't have to do anything with it. The permissions for that team automatically get created. Again, you don't have to do anything. So,
hey John, I'm sorry, I want to jump in here. At Washoe County, we regulate the creation of teams.
okay,
So a team can be created through a help desk request, and usually for our SharePoint team, that takes about 15 minutes to create it, and we send out some other information about how how Teams works with SharePoint pages and all that, just so that people aren't creating teams,
okay,
willy-nilly.
good feedback. Thank you. So
Yep.
within your environment, you do have to go through IT to get a team created, but all the backend stuff happens automatically. The library, the document library or the folder gets created, and this happens for every channel that's created. Now, can you tell me, can they create their own channels, or is that regulated through IT as well?
No, they can create their own channels. So once you have a team, you basically have free reign inside of that team and SharePoint side and all the channels and stuff like that.
Okay,
So
good.
it's just the creation of the teams that we regulate.
Excellent. Okay, but again, nothing you have to do on the back end. That document area gets created for you automatically. You don't have to manage it. It's there in SharePoint. You never even have to look at it. You don't have to go to SharePoint at all, because you can just access it through your Teams client. You do have the option of going there in SharePoint, because if I click on files here, you can see I have open in SharePoint and it will take me there. It'll just navigate me right there by clicking open in SharePoint. Boom. So if you do want to go to SharePoint and manage that file or look at it, you can do that. Does that answer your question, Angela? Okay. All right. So any more questions on Teams and channels specifically before we move to calls?
Looks like we're good.
Okay. So if you click on calls, and again, I don't know exactly how your environment's provisioned. If you don't have PSTN calling enabled, which a lot of organizations don't, you won't see a number pad here like you see on mine. Because we're able to make phone calls from Teams, we have the number pad. If you don't have the number pad, it just means you're not going to be able to, call somebody in the outside world using the old-fashioned telephone system. You can call people. I'm sorry, another question for your IT guy. Do you have Open Federation at Washoe? Can you answer that? Do you have Open Federation? No, I don't know. All right, so if you guys have Open Federation, you can place a call to somebody by their email, which is typically the same as their SIP address. So their SIP address. So I can type anybody on Teams, even in the outside world. So like for me, it'd be john@jforcesystems.com. Type a name and then call that name. I can also manage those contacts in my contact list. So anybody who's in my contact list that has Teams, I can call them. So this contact list actually got read in from Outlook. I didn't have to really maintain it. I can also maintain a separate speed dial list, so I can add people to that as well. And from the speed dial, I can do a video call. I can do an audio call. I can start a chat. So pretty much any way I want to communicate with these people. And an audio call is going to look very much the same as what we're doing right now. Even a video call, it'll just have the camera off. I mean, an audio call will have the camera off. So let's take a look at some of the controls here. When you're in a call, it'll look very much the same. You can turn your camera on and off. You can mute your microphone. You can share content from a call. So this middle one right here, if I were to click it, you would stop being able to see my screen. Let me pull up a screenshot. So when I click this little middle button, this lets me share content. So I've got a number of different desktop options. So I have two monitors. So my first monitor and my second monitor. I also can start a whiteboard session, etc. Share a PowerPoint. So that's the sharing button. Then we have this button right here, which allows you to control some aspects of the meeting. So you can start recording here, and Trevor has already started the recording on this one. I can end the meeting, of course. I can show meeting details, etc. And then this is the chat. We've already talked about that. So this is where we can communicate on the meeting or the call. And then this is the show participants. So depending on what your settings are, and I'm going to go into the setting, how to create a meeting and how to set the settings here in a second. When somebody comes into your meeting, they'll usually go into what's called a lobby, and you've got to admit them. So they're going to be up here, and you'll get, when somebody comes into the meeting, you'll get a little checkbox where you can admit them, or you'll have an admit all if there's several people waiting to come into the meeting. Other things I can do to manage people is I can do a mute all. If I do mute all, it mutes everyone but myself. So if I click that, you get this option, mute, and you'll notice it did not mute me because I'm the presenter, but it muted everybody else. So that's really useful in a larger meeting like this where you get a lot of background noise if people aren't muted. And I can also, if I want to send this meeting out to other people, I can copy the join info. I copied it to the clipboard and then I can paste it in. I can also invite somebody by just typing their email address or phone number in here, and it will pull them into the call with an invitation. Other things you can do is you can go to a specific person in the meeting, click on it, and you get an option where you can pin them to the top, remove them as a participant. If they weren't already muted, I could mute them from here. So I can mute specific participants. So this icon here is your main go-to for managing people in a meeting. Now I'd say in a larger group, it's important that you keep everyone muted. Otherwise, you do get a lot of background noise. So ask people to stay muted, do a mute all if you need to, etc. All right, so let's go into how to create a meeting. So if I click on calendar here, it's going to show me basically my Exchange calendar. If there's a Teams meeting here that's going on, I can actually join it from here. You can actually create meetings from here, and I'm going to come back and show you that in a second, because the more common way of creating meetings is from Outlook. So let me bring my Outlook calendar over. And everybody, if you have Outlook, you should have a new Teams meeting icon in Outlook. So this is the most common way of creating a meeting. So I'm going to go to where I want the meeting to be created. Let's say Friday at noon. I'll do new Teams meeting. That's going to pop up something like this. And you'll see with Outlook, it automatically put the join info right here in the body of the meeting. So then I would give it a title. And then you can invite people. So a nice little trick, if you're doing a large meeting and you don't want other people to see other people's email addresses within the meeting invite, you can click where it says required here. And instead of typing their name under required, type their name under resources. If you do that, it will prompt you to say, do you want to update the location with those people's names? You want to say no, or it will put their email addresses right here under location, so that defeats the purpose. So to this question, you want to say no, but that did add them up here. So you'll see it shows them as required, but if I click on that button again, you'll see it's actually under where it says resources. By doing that, it does hide the addresses from the other people in the meeting. So that's kind of a nice, polite way of doing large groups. You can also add people as optional. And then you have all the normal stuff you have with an Outlook meeting, such as recurrence, scheduling assistance, where you can look at people's schedule and select a time slot based on that. And you can put more information into the meeting invite. So that's basically how you do it in Outlook. So let's go back to our Teams client. All right, so once you've, so the way you do, let me show you, the way you create it in the Teams client is you can click New Meeting. If you drop this down, you'll see that there's also something called a live event. And this is something your admins can turn off or on, and so I don't know if it's been enabled for you. And I'm not going to really cover live events today, but a live event is more of a one-way meeting where people can't participate in audio. They can add chat, but it scales up to 10,000 people. So this is used for very large meetings, usually one-way presentations, like maybe a town hall type event. So we'll do schedule new meeting. This is a standard meeting. One thing you'll note is that it doesn't, you won't see the connect information in the body of the email until it's created. It does add it, but not until I actually save the meeting. So you'll give your meeting a title. You can add required attendees. We don't have the same option here of doing the resource thing. So that's really, if you need to do that, you need to do that in Outlook. So you can add names. Again, you do get recurrence. You do get your scheduling assistant, so you can look for free times. One of the things you get here that you don't get in Outlook is you can actually add a channel to your meeting, which means that everything, like if you record the meeting or if you include content like whiteboarding or files or whatever within the meeting, that gets stored to the channel for future reference. So once the meeting's completed, people will be able to go back and look at the chats and whatever was associated with this meeting. So I can add a channel to the meeting. You're generally going to leave location blank because this is a Teams meeting. So that's basically how you create a meeting here. You'd click send. So let's see what happens once a meeting is created. So let's go into a meeting that already exists. Once a meeting's created, I get some more options. You can't do this while you're creating the meeting, but you can go back into it after you've created it. And now I can add some content to that meeting. So I can add files that maybe there's files I want to collaborate on once the meeting starts. I can pre-add those to the meeting. I can add meeting notes, and I can even pre-create a whiteboard with some content if I wanted to. So that's how you create and schedule a meeting.
John, it looks like there's a question from Anita. When hosting a Teams meeting, what if you don't see the option to invite by phone?
Okay, so in order to have the phone, which is called an audio conferencing capability, there is a separate license you need for that. So you'll need to contact your IT team. If you're not seeing the audio capabilities in your invites like you saw in mine, let me bring that back up. Hold on. So if I click a new meeting here, you'll notice that it has an audio conference bridge here with a conference ID. If you're not seeing that in your meeting invites, that means you're not enabled for audio conferencing. Everybody by default. If you have access to Teams, you can create a Teams meeting. But audio conferencing, specifically where you can dial in from a PSTN phone, requires a separate license called an audio conferencing license. So again, if you need that, you'll need to contact your IT department. And if you don't see it, it means you don't have it. Good question. Okay. So that's how you create meetings. Any more questions on creating meetings and scheduling meetings?
Not seeing any new questions.
Okay. So we did go over meeting controls earlier. So one of the things I did want to show you outside of that was present. So if you come up here and you click on your icon up here in the upper right, it says I'm presenting, so it automatically puts me as do not disturb. When I'm in do not disturb, it blocks any kind of chat or notifications that I might get. Let's say if I want to be able to get those notifications while I'm presenting, then I would come up here and I can override the automatic status of do not disturb and select myself as busy. Now those notifications will come through. If I want to reset my status back to automatically detecting what I'm doing, so basically if there's something in my calendar like a meeting or whatever, it's going to mark me as busy. If there's nothing in my calendar and I'm not on the phone, it will mark me as available. If I'm been away from my desk for, I think the default is 5 minutes, you can set that in settings, it'll mark me as away. So that if I want to go back to automatically detecting my status, I can just click reset status. And now you can see I'm do not disturb again. So that's status and how to manage your status. Another thing you can do, which is kind of neat, is you can set a status message. So I don't know if you guys were using Skype for Business before Teams, but one of the new things they've entered is, you know, we've been able to always enter a status message, like maybe I'm going to be doing interviews all day, so I want people to kind of lay off of messaging me. I can put doing interviews. And one of the new things here is I can set a time to live for that message, so it automatically goes away at the end of that time. So if I'm just wanting to do this for today, I would just select today. And basically when people look at my, you know, when people are messaging me or whatever, they're going to see my status. Here's the settings. So these are some of the general settings you can go through. This one is on by default, so it'll auto start the Teams application every time you log into your computer. You can unselect that if you want to be able to manually launch the Teams application. Some privacy settings. You can control your notifications when and where they pop up. This is where you can select your audio device. So if you have a headset or you want to use your computer audio, you can come in here and you can override. It'll automatically detect, usually if you have a Teams compatible headset or something, it'll automatically set that for you. But if for some reason it didn't, you can come up here and you can drop that down and select the right device, and then you can test it from here. You can also set a secondary ringer, which means if you want to have it ring on your external speakers, I can select that here, so I can hear when a call comes in. And this is where you can allow permissions for certain devices. And this is like, because we have voice capabilities, you know, this goes, you know, it says when to go to voicemail. I can forward my calls, etc. Change my ringtones. Because I'm a member of a call queue, I can turn that on and off from here as well. All right, any questions on Teams? Because this pretty much concludes my presentation for today. All right. All right, well, I'm going to stay on in case there's any new questions. Trever did record it. He'll get it posted to YouTube and send out a link. Okay, so Quinn just posted that if anybody does need a audio conferencing license, to contact him. Or that was for Anita. Or anyone else, okay.
+17753998559
Is now exiting.
Hey, John, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I couldn't find my chat button, so I couldn't type in a question. But my question is, so if I wanted to do a presentation with a group of outside people, I can just invite them via email. Is that correct? Like what you did today?
Correct. So you'll just create the invite. Typically in Outlook, you'll create the new Teams meeting. So this is just like any other meeting you do in Outlook, and then you would like I said, if you can just type their email address under required, or if you don't want other people to see each other's email, you can put them on. You can click required and put them under resources.
Okay. So do I have to
by email
personally
address.
invite them, or can they be forwarded to other people who wanted to participate in the presentation, listening on the presentation?
Good question. It can be forwarded, but there's you'll definitely want to manage security around that. So by that I mean, let me go back to Teams here. So you can go back into a meeting after you've created it here in the Teams client, and I can set meeting options here. You can't do this while you're creating the meeting. You have to do it after you've created the meeting. You have to go back into the meeting using the Teams client. Then I can come in here to meeting options, and it's going to actually pop up a browser window, and I can change some options here. Who can bypass the lobby? So this says people in my organization can bypass the lobby. Who can present? Everyone. I can change any of these settings So like if I
Okay.
wanted everyone to bypass the lobby, I could do that, but that means that anybody can forward this email or this invite to anybody else, even outside my organization, and they can just join without even being admitted to the meeting. So these are things to consider when you do that. But yes, a meeting invite can be forwarded to anybody,
Okay, great.
but then you can
Thank you.
control access through these settings here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And oh, and one more thing,
Yes,
the chat, to get to the chat, you'll have this little bar. You'll
right.
see this little bar. It's
Yeah.
this icon right there.
Mine is missing that icon. I'm not sure why.
It's weird. Should be there. All right. I don't know. It should be there. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Trevor. I'm going to end the meeting.
Alrighty, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.